Welcome everyone to Diane's Patisserie. I'm Diane Nussbaum, Executive Pastry Chef of Diane's Patisserie. And today we are making our award-winning ricotta cheesecake. We actually won a Best of Philly for those of you who live in the Philadelphia area. They do contests every year for the most delicious many things. And one of those years we were able to win a Best of Philly for our ricotta cheesecake. So I thought you might love to make one of these at home since it is quite delicious. So I wanted to prepare my cake pan to begin, and we bake this cake in a 400-degree oven for the first 20 minutes and then lower it to 375 or 350 for the remaining hour baking. It bakes a long time. And we also bake it in a water bath, which I'll be showing you exactly how to do that. Now we bake our cheesecakes in a closed bottom pan. But if you have a springform pan, you can still do it. You will just wrap the bottom of your pan in aluminum foil very tightly, and I can show you how to do that as well. And then the whole pan is set in another pan of water. The reason for doing this is because this is a custard, a baked custard basically, and the way you want it to bake is evenly so that the top will not crack. If you bake it in a water bath, your cheesecake will not crack. So that's very important. So first, I've mixed our graham cracker crumbs with some butter, and I like to kind of roll them around the side of our greased pan to kind of give it an edge. And then the rest of the graham crumbs are going in, and I press them down very, very strongly with my hands. And you can also take another cake pan to press them in as well, or anything, you know, a little bit harder, because we don't want the graham crumbs to fall apart when they come out of the pan. So I'm really, really, really pressing hard, especially right at the edges, because sometimes when you go to take your cheesecake out of the pan, if you're using a spring form, you might not have that problem, but we want to make sure that we don't have any breakage coming out of the pan. So it's very solid, and it will be just fine. So now we're going to start, and of course, as always, preheat your oven to 400 degrees. Have your cream cheese, your sour cream, your ricotta cheese, your eggs, everything at room temperature, and we like to use a little bit of orange rind as well. So I'm going to put the cream cheese in the bowl first. So if you are making an 8-inch cheesecake like the one that we have, you would be using 5.5 ounces of cream cheese. We are making a 10-inch cheesecake because we usually serve more people at our parties. So I'm going to turn this on. And I'm adding our sugar, our granulated sugar, to that. And then I'm also adding our sour cream to that. And all of these things help to break down the cream cheese so that by the time you put the ricotta cheese in, the cream cheese is well mixed. So these are the order of ingredients that you think, that I believe are the best way to do this cheesecake. Also, because with the cheesecake, you don't want it to rise too much, because if it rises too much, then it will crack. So the eggs are actually the last thing that goes in. Everything else goes in before that. So we have a little bit of all-purpose flour also that will go in right at the end with the eggs. And we have a little cinnamon sugar that we sprinkle on the top to make it even a little more delicious. One of the other things that you can do with this cheesecake is to either add an amaretto or an almond extract. We do put vanilla in here as well. So if you like to have a little bit more of a strong flavor, feel free to use any extract or flavoring that you like. So this is coming along very nicely. And because the cream cheese is at room temperature, it's blending very well, very quickly. It's good. So we have, for an 8-inch cheesecake, we would be using 10.5 ounces of ricotta cheese. And so that leaves you with a little bit of ricotta cheese left in your container if you buy a 15-ounce container of ricotta cheese. So we have to figure out what to do with our extra ricotta cheese, and I have the perfect solution if you like to eat cannoli, and especially cannoli that are filled with ricotta cheese. At the end, we're going to make a cannoli filling so that we can serve it along with our ricotta cheesecake. And on the one that you see there, we've actually put the ricotta cannoli filling right on top of our cheesecake and served it that way, which is really fantastic. We took it to a party and our friends were just like, wow, this is unbelievable. So I hope you enjoy it as much as my friends did, because they really thought it was quite a winner. So I'm just getting all of the cheese in. And I do recommend, if you have the opportunity to use a fresh ricotta cheese, if you have a market near you that will sell a fresh ricotta cheese, I do recommend that you use that because it really will give you the best flavor of all. So I'm going to put a little bit of the almond extract in now, about a half a teaspoon, and a little bit of the vanilla. And then I like to use a little bit of orange rind, so if you have a zester, I think it's great to have one of these. They really work so well. So we have just been zesting a little bit of our orange, and of course the smell is so wonderful. And I think it gives it that one little special flavor that maybe, you know, people won't recognize at first, but when they eat it, they'll say, boy, this really tastes good. So we have our orange zest. I'm going to put that in. And I like to stop the mixer every once in a while to scrape down the sides to make sure that nothing is stuck. We want to make sure everything is blending well. So whenever you're baking anything, it's always good to scrape down the sides every once in a while before you put your batter into your pan. And especially down to the very bottom. We'll give it another few seconds to mix, and then we'll put the eggs and the flour, and we are using an all-purpose flour, not a cake flour. So an all-purpose flour is a little bit heavier than a cake flour, and if you only have one or the other, you can change by 1 tablespoon per cup of all-purpose flour. Take away one tablespoon of all-purpose flour to make it more consistent with the cake flour. But for this recipe, we want the all-purpose flour. And that's what we usually use for most cookies, muffins, things like that. A lot of cakes also use an all-purpose flour. So just to give you an idea of what the batter looks like, it's very creamy, it's very thick, it's looking pretty smooth. So we have 4 eggs that we are putting into this batter, and I'm going to add them one at a time so they get incorporated nicely. So we just want each one to get into the batter, and then the next. And you see the mixer's on a much lower speed right now because I don't want to fluff it up too much. I don't want these to be beaten hard. Okay, so they're all in. And we will put in our little bit of flour. Just gives it a little bit more stability. So when we did win our Best of Philly, we did actually put an amaretto into the batter, which really made it great. But if you don't like to use alcohol when you're cooking or baking, no worries. Just use almond extract, or you can even use a mocha flavoring if you like, because everything's really good with the ricotta cheese, so you don't have to worry about anything in particular. And it looks very nice. The batter looks really nice, which you're going to see in just a minute. And you can see the orange color actually from the orange rind, which for those of you who will get to taste this, you will like it. All right. It's a little more orange in color, a little thinner now that the eggs are in it, but the batter is very nice. And again, as I said, I always stir it from the bottom before I put it into the pan just to make sure everything is completely incorporated down to the bottom of the bowl. Get as much off of your beater as you can. So we'll just pour it right into the bowl, from the bowl into the pan. There's a lot of batter, so it really fills up this pan very, very well. It's a big cheesecake. So as I said, we're going to bake it at 400 degrees for the first 20 minutes. And I'll show you how we put it in a water bath. And we check the water in the water bath throughout the baking just to make sure that there's plenty of water surrounding the cheesecake. So the cinnamon sugar goes on top. If you want it to be fancy, you can actually swirl the cinnamon sugar through the top of the cheesecake too. That would be cool. All right, so in the oven, we have a pan that is filled with water. So I just put the cheesecake in this roasting pan with water about halfway up, at least an inch up the side of the pan, and it will go in the oven for the next 15 or 20 minutes. And after that time, we will check the water and make sure that there's enough water in there, and we'll continuously add more water for the entire baking time so that when the cheesecake is finished, it will have a very smooth surface and no cracks. The other thing that's really important about cheesecake is because it's a custard and it's going to puff up, you want it to gently come down. So when it's finished baking, we usually leave it in the oven with the oven turned off for about a half an hour. So it is gently coming down in temperature, and then we refrigerate it for at least a couple of hours before we even try and get it out of the pan. So the best thing to do with the cheesecake is to make it the day before you plan to serve it, because it really needs proper time to cool. Now we can make our cannoli filling. And we have some cream cheese, some ricotta cheese left over, some sugar, some cinnamon, some vanilla, some orange, and we're going to mix all of those things together in our bowl and fill some little cannoli shells so you can see how we will do that. So I wanted to show you how to wrap your pan. If you don't have a closed bottom pan, it's really not hard to do this. If you have a springform pan, turn it upside down so you don't have that little ledge at the bottom. You just have a straight edge that goes to the bottom of your pan. And then you take aluminum foil and you wrap it tightly all the way around your pan. So of course you probably have a bigger piece of aluminum foil than what I have today, but you need to make it tight so that when you put this into the water bath, no water will get into the bottom of your pan. So do 2 or 3 pieces of aluminum foil, whatever you think you need to make it tight. But then the question is, how do we get it out of the pan once you have baked it if you're using a closed bottom pan? So I never knew how to do this until a German pastry chef showed me, so I want to show you. We are actually taking the pan and putting it right on the burner and turning it just a few times. No, wrong one. There we go. You just turn it around because the cheesecake, remember, has been in your refrigerator, and so it's cold. So that makes it less fragile. So once you turn it around a few times, and I'm crazy, I count. I usually do about 30 times around to make sure it's going to come out of the pan. And we also put parchment paper in the bottom of our pan so there will be no sticking. So we just take some parchment paper, turn it over, and it comes right out. And we need a cake board to put it on. So now it's on a piece of parchment paper. We have our cake board or our plate that we're going to put it on. It's cold, so you don't have to worry about anything happening to it. You turn it over and it's perfect. And that's how you do it. So I just want you to know, see how nice and flat it came out? No crack. It's beautiful. So there we are. So now we're going to make our cannoli filling. So in this dish I have some of the cream cheese that we had left over from the batter for the cheesecake and some 10x sugar. And the sugar amount is really up to you. If you like it sweeter, you add more. If you don't like it as sweet, you add less. So I really didn't measure. I never measure this. I just kind of taste it to see what we like. And so we're going to beat up the cream cheese until it's pretty smooth. Now, one trick, I guess, that I can let you know about, if you beat the ricotta cheese too long, it gets really watery, which is one of the reasons for adding the cream cheese to my cannoli filling. It helps to give it body so it won't be so runny, because you don't want your cannoli filling to be running out of your cannoli shells. So let's beat this a little bit. And again, we're going to put a little bit of orange in here too. Not too much, but just a little taste. So I just want to scrape down the bottom of the bowl because sometimes there's some sugar caught at the bottom. So you can use a small spoon or a small spatula to scrape the bottom of your bowl. These little spoons come in very handy. So it's nice to have a variety of gadgets in your kitchen. The more utensils you have to help you make your product go more smoothly, really, it's worth it to invest in some really great kitchen gadgets. And now we're going to add the ricotta cheese. It only needs to blend. It doesn't really need to mix. And of course we have to put in our chocolate chips. What would cannoli be without our chocolate chips? And we save a few to put on the ends as well. And a little bit of cinnamon sugar to give it a good flavor also. And I think our filling is done. So all we need to do now is get a pastry bag and pipe it into some shells. I'm not really sure where you can buy cannoli shells retail. I know that we're able to, but I guess you may need to look on the internet to find any sources for cannoli shells. At this moment, I don't have a source. And I think I'm going to take the tip out because I think the chocolate chips might get caught in this. And we'll fill these right up. So each end you just pipe until you fill it. Dip it in the chocolate chips. This is looking fantastic. And then you can either dust them with a little powdered sugar if you like, or leave them the way they are. And so just to show you how beautiful our cheesecake is, we're going to cut it. So I think we'll cut the one that has the cannoli filling on the top so you can really see what that looks like on the inside. And serve it with one of our beautiful cannoli. Turn this around so you can see the inside. The texture is just really beautiful on this. So we would continue to cut for every person, another slice, another cannoli on the side, and if you wanted to, you could put a little powdered sugar on there as well. So I hope that you've enjoyed our presentation today of our ricotta cheesecake. I will put a little bit of powdered sugar on there. So thank you so much for joining me today with our award-winning ricotta cheesecake. I hope you make it at home. I hope you realize how to bake it in a water bath that will make it a beautiful flat surface. You won't have any more cracking of your cheesecakes if you're used to making cheesecake. And if you have any questions, always call me, send me an email, send me a text message. You can always reach me on my website at diane@dianespatisserie.com, 609-560-4111. And I love to see what you're doing at home and how much fun you're having making these recipes. So please stay in touch and be tuned for our upcoming episodes that will have a lot of more fun things to do with your family, with your kids, with your company. Enjoy your day. Thanks for joining me. See you again soon.